Welcome to this Discovering Leadership podcast. My name is Corbin Hannis from Inchurian. I'm joined by my co-host Carl Bowden from Exemplify Leadership. Today we've got a very special episode, and we're joined with a guest, Braden McCurdy, CEO of McCurdy Auction. First, Carl, can you tell us a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about delegation, how to multiply our productivity. Now, before we get into that topic, I want to mention the purpose of the Discovering Leadership podcast. So, the purpose is really to invest in you. It's to invest in the fundamentals of leadership, to build relationships, to craft strategy, not only for your business, but also for your personal life. It's to help you become the most authentic version of yourself that you can be. We are aiming to lead leaders. We're aiming to help people lead by example through action. Now, today's episode is going to be on multiplying productivity. We're going to be covering topics such as the specialization of tasks, increasing efficiency, instilling ownership in what we do, and then the power of an effective team. Now, before we get into the topic, I'm going to turn it over to Corbin, and he's going to give a brief introduction to our guest, Braden McCurdy.
So yeah, Braden, again, this is a very special episode. I really appreciate you letting us come out here to your office and sharing your space with us. You're fantastic and everything that you do. Right now, you're the Chief Executive Officer, a broker, and an auctioneer here at McCurdy Real Estate and Auction, as as well as the president-elect of the South Central Kansas Realtors Association and the current president of the Kansas Auctioneers Association. Braden, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. I love you. I'm happy. Like I'm all ecstatic. It's
Well,
good to have you here.
appreciate the opportunity. Glad to be here and glad to share what a little bit of wisdom I can offer today.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Thanks again. Carl, you want to get it started?
Yeah, so maybe, Braden, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you currently do in your business.
So I grew up in the auction business, and we kind of joke, but it really is true. We cleaned out a lot of houses as children. And we also kind of joke that we learned that child labor laws don't apply to your immediate family. And so we kind of grew up around entrepreneurial, spirited family. And
Mm.
my dad's dad, grandpa, he had a new car dealership. My mom's parents, they had a music store, both of them over in Hutchinson. And then mom and dad came over here in the 60s. And dad had been in the banking business, but his childhood kind of love was of the auction business. And so in 82, he came out full time into the auction business. And so our business has evolved and changed so much over the years. And we learned as children, we learned a lot of, I'd say, valuable lessons relative to business, relative to operating a business, and, figuring out what it takes to make a business work. And so that has continued to grow in the business. I have an older brother. Many people don't know about Scott. He refers to himself as the one that got away. And Scott has done really, really well in the oil and gas industry down in Texas. And then since then, and then I have a younger sister also in the business. And I always was fascinated by real estate. Real estate was something that intrigued me when I was in high school. And so I decided at 18 years old, which is the earliest age you can obtain a real estate license, to go get my real estate license. And then I had my real estate license and worked all through college at Wichita State, and was in a situation where I would be in class in the mornings. And then in the afternoon, I'd come down to the office. At the time, we were only like 2 miles away from Wichita State's campus. And so in the afternoons, I was in the office. And I've touched every piece of our business from start to finish. And I've done everything in this company I know how to do or have done.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my background, and it's been fun. We're in the auction business, but there are days it feels like we're in the software business. There are days that we 100% are in the relationship and in the people business.
Yeah.
And I think those fundamentals, doesn't necessarily matter what your business is. some of the fundamentals of how to build teams, grow, leadership, management styles, all of those elements contribute to the success of an entrepreneurial business that's growing.
That's amazing. It sounds like it really started with family.
Yeah.
This whole business is built off family and developing those really close, tight knit, relationships with your family,
Yep.
but also with the people that you hire on. You're focused on others, and
Yes, 100%. And what we find is we have some really long-term employees, 10, 15, 20, 30 plus year employees that are with the firm, and they are a part of the family. And
Mhm.
we talk about our business is its own family to a degree, and I think that gets into the heart of kind of culture of an organization, and you've got to have a strong culture, and your people have to support that culture and mesh well together. And so that is an ingredient, I'd say, that we continue as a firm to look at how do we improve, and how do we continue to invent new things that can help the family as a whole, the business family as a whole. And sometimes we call it being an employer of choice. And what can we do to help our employees, and thinking about it from their perspectives, in addition to achieving the business goals, in addition to achieving our family goals. And sometimes we put it into three buckets or three hats. You have your family hat, you have your owner hat, and then you have your manager hat. And those
Makes
three different
sense.
hats, depending upon the meeting you may be in, or when you're dealing with a client, or not necessarily a client, but internally when you're dealing with coworkers, and working together with them, which hat is on at the right time is an important ingredient to keep in mind.
Yeah, totally. You mentioned a lot about culture and that there's a family culture around here. And, sometimes you have different hats. You have that owner hat, that manager hat, that family hat. I was curious, what have you done to invest in your team and multiply this growth in your business, whether it's, putting on a different hat or investing in the culture?
I'd say the first thing is anytime a new employee comes in, we want to see them grow. It's always exciting because they bring an outside influence. So we have a lot to learn from them, but then they also have a lot to learn from us about the business and the mechanics of it. Sometimes we call that mastering the art or the skill. If it's somebody in the sales arena, then do you have your real estate license? And then once you have your real estate license, that's kind of step one. Now you're ready for the real street education.
Yeah.
And so, and that takes years of experience to build. And we have seasoned professionals, licensees that are auctioneers and realtors that, every day we learn new and we continue to learn new, and you're always learning. And so how do you continue to, I'd say, perfect the skills that you use on a daily basis to help our buyers and sellers? Part of our mission is connecting buyers and sellers. And for many, many years, we did that on the front lawn of properties where we would connect these buyers and sellers. And through COVID, we transitioned 100%, maybe 99% to online only. And so now it's a team of programmers that are helping us facilitate these connections in a kind of an online marketplace. And transacting real estate online is not something you see every day.
Oh, yeah.
Our team has been able to build that and implement that in the Wichita and surrounding area. And so, it's fun. It's a neat business, and it's neat seeing people continue to grow. And back to specifically your question, I think it's about training, and not only getting them in and getting them a master of the craft, and realizing the skills that it takes to do the job, but continuing to offer that training and grow them. And so if it's, maybe in the sales and agent side, everything from continuing education through designations, through the Realtors Association, through the Auctioneers Associations, through the designations that are offered in each of those arenas. Those are all fantastic solutions for continuing to advance their abilities. And I think that's the main thing, is training them and continuing to challenge them with new opportunities for them to learn. I think that is what it's all about. We all hunger to continue to learn and grow in our abilities. And so the more we can provide that for our people, whether it's global leadership summits, or whether it's some of the programs that Wichita State in the business school. I have the opportunity to serve on the Dean's Advisory Board at
Oh
Wichita
yeah.
State. And some of the education opportunities that come up there for kind of the executive management programs, or some of the MBA type classes, or one-off speakers that they'll bring in. We're constantly scouring the marketplace for those opportunities, and selecting the right people internally that it's right time, right place for their continued path of development and growth.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, very important.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're really focusing on people, investing in them,
Yeah.
whether it's their training, there's a leadership summit you're going to, or some kind of professional association that deals with auctioneering as well.
The people are what make the difference, and that's really your competitive advantage. You can reproduce software, you can reproduce buildings and equipment and things of that nature, but at the end of the day, it really boils down to who are the maybe architects behind that machine that works, and that's your people.
Yeah.
Most definitely. So, not many of the audience members might know this, but I had a little stint here at McCurdy where I was
Yes.
working over in your accounting department, and you had mentioned culture. W- Through all of my experiences in my career, my experience here at McCurdy Auction and the culture that's here is probably one of the best cultures I've ever experienced.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that.
I love it here, and that's one of the reasons why I got so excited and really, really happy to hear back from you and have you involved in our podcast. And I look up to you as a leader as a result of that culture.
Well, thank you.
Having said that, thinking about it and thinking of the culture and the family environment that you guys have here, how do you think that the mentality of everybody here helps with multiplying that growth throughout the entire business?
It's a great question. And one, we had a lot of fun, and we try to make our environment fun. The nature of our
Mhm.
business, they're high energy. I mean, an online auction sounds maybe like it's going to be boring versus a live auction in the field. But I'll tell you what, you put sellers right here staring at that screen, and
Yeah.
there's 1 second left and somebody bids. I mean, there's moments there's hooting and hollering going on in our office.
Yeah.
And so it's really energizing, and it's a fun business in that regard. And we've done a lot of things, whether it's, birthday lunches, whether it's time off, whether it's quarterly events, whether it's, we do a big gavel gold trip every year
Oh
where
yeah.
we take everybody and we'll either go up to Kansas City, or this year we're going to Bricktown in Oklahoma City
Nice.
coming up. So if you're still here, you're going to Oklahoma City,
Hey.
that's right now, but hopefully you can still tag along.
Hey,
But
I'll make the drive. I'll make it.
I think it really, you nailed it. It multiplies when you have the right people on the bus, and they're all pulling the same direction, and they understand the vision, they understand the goals, objectives of the business, and the mission and the vision of the firm. Uh, it kind of falls in line,
Mm.
and it does offer that multiplying effect when the right people are in place, and that's a little bit of an art, putting the right people in place, making sure that they're fulfilled and satisfied in their roles and their future growth, and at the same time meeting the needs of the business. And so it certainly offers that multiplying effect, and finding the things that help motivate those managers continue to grow themselves, but then also help them grow their people as well.
Most definitely.
Is It's a little bit of a challenge, but it's
Yeah.
fun, and I think it goes back to being in that people business.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. So talking about that and thinking about whenever I was here, one thing that really helped me shape how I'm growing my business and growing insuring is the ownership values. And one thing that I noticed was you guys do a really, really great job of providing ownership. I personally think that's a big reason why you guys are growing at the pace you're growing, and people are all across the board helping with growing. And it's doing, in my opinion, a fantastic thing. Do you want to speak a little bit about instilling ownership towards people's tasks or position?
I think it's finding the right people, getting the right people on the bus. And then, yeah, there's some training and onboarding that has to take time. And depending upon the role that they're in, it might be several weeks of that, or it might be years of training.
Yeah.
And so you never know for sure until it depends on the position. But once they're up and running, and once they've learned, kind of and mastered the skill, that's when I'd say they gain autonomy and can roll
That
and can
makes sense.
run
Yeah.
and can affect change. And you know that the implementation is to your maybe standard, and there's nothing wrong with having a high standard. And
Oh, yeah.
we strive to continue to advance our not only our business but also advance our industry. Both on a local basis and on a nationwide basis, we're very, very active in the National Auctioneers Association, and anything we can do to help auction be a better be seen as a better solution, because sometimes it's had a negative connotation. Our industry is probably could have done a better job of presenting some of the positives behind it and maximizing competition and cleanliness for sellers and things of that nature. And so that's really what I think it boils down to is to instill in them. They've got to see it, feel it, believe it, and then they
Mhm.
become an advocate for it. And then that's when that multiplier effect kicks in.
That makes sense.
That's huge. See it, feel it, and believe it. That's that's massive. Because when they feel it, when it becomes a part of them, they're owning it,
That's it.
and they feel like they're contributing. They feel like they belong. They feel like they can make a difference.
Well, the one thing is right now, millennials want to be part of a greater good. And so one of our elements is people ask us all the time, well, who's your competition? And although we have other auctioneers that do the same thing, our direct competition is probably more the traditional real estate process. And by no way means is auction, the best way all the time, but it's a complement and it's another angle. And so really, anything we can do to share the good word about how auction impacts positively so many prominent families within our community, the better. And, what we see is, 10, 12 years ago, where all properties in our county would sell at auction was roughly 2%. Today, that's knocking on 7%. And so we're affecting change in that regard of seeing just a growth in this process. And a decade is a lot and 5% isn't much. But that's a pretty big change. And it's a little bit of a shift in terms of the tolerance and acceptance and values and benefits of what we do in the market every day.
That's a really important point that you just pulled up right there. When we value something, usually it's because of our environment and being surrounded by that. So if you want to value, you know, others valuing auctioneering and the benefits that it provides, you're providing that awareness, that education, and you're getting them to show the positive benefits of what you do. And I think that applies to a lot of our podcast listeners too. If they can start educate and help people become more aware, then they start to see things through different perspectives too. That's really cool. I want to ask a question. You had mentioned that everyone has to be on, the right seat in the bus. So what specific roles do you have here at McCurdy Auctions, and what do those roles play in the growth of the business?
Well, we're still a small business. We're about 35 people. And so there's days you feel like you're the janitor. And then there's days you feel like you're in the most challenging, complex real estate transaction ever. And so I do serve as broker and CEO here at McCurdy, and I am one of our auctioneers. And so those each kind of encumber different elements of the business. But generally, kind of a few different hats. And that's small business. That really genuinely is small business. That there's no task that can't be done by anybody in this building. And we try to really cross train our people and have our people adaptable as much as possible. I mean, there's areas a technical programmer in the IT world isn't probably going to be a bid caller, or vice versa. But we do try to cross train as much as we can so that we have greater versatility with our team and the ability to adapt to the scenarios that each and every one of us find ourselves in on a daily basis. And so on a daily basis, though, still do a fair amount of transactions, and it's continue to, it's neat to see some of the youth coming into the organization, especially on the sales side, that are growing and learning what we're doing on a regular basis. And so there's moments that's mentorship, there's moments that's manager, there's moments that are client meetings, there's moments that's just kind of a little bit of everything every day. And that can, sometimes you can find yourself spread a little too thin. And sometimes that's maybe a sign that it's time to add somebody that can own that area more so and be fully dedicated to it. And so as the business grows and the capability of our firm expands, then we do that exactly. We assess and say, is this an opportunity for addition of a staff position that we've never had before? When you're maintaining status quo, you have the right people in the right place. And then if you have an adjustment, somebody moves, somebody's, switching of career or something of that nature, you fill that spot. But I'd say it's more challenging to identify what you need to add and then budget it in and then train and then hold accountability for performance. And so those are all elements that are a little trickier than maybe an established position where you can perhaps hit the repeat button on that position from a previous person in that role. And so that's a little bit of the day in the life of. But I still love interacting with clients on a daily basis and helping them navigate. Whether it's today, for example, it was everything from an estate or somebody. Today, literally, I was on a phone call and they have 13 children, and dad had an airplane hangar south of Wichita, and it's the airplane hangar. And so navigating that, and then or 13 sellers, I believe it was, maybe not 13 children. I think that's with spouses. But then, or a business, a large business in Southeast Wichita, and they're ready to retire and spend time with their grandchildren. So helping them begin the navigation of how do we downsize, what do we do, and help us get to that next chapter. That's personally rewarding to help those clients navigate those. We do a lot of estates. We do a lot of senior downsizing. We do farm ground. We see commercial buildings, industrial buildings. We see all that. And so those are transitions for people in their lives. And that sometimes there's a business transaction there, but there's also oftentimes a lot of emotion involved. If this was mom and dad's house for 50 years, that's sometimes very challenging, other than just sell it and sign a deed. And so sometimes there's a little bit of counseling. And so, but it's fun and helping people internally and externally. That continues to. We've got to provide the resources for our people in house, but at the same time, be there for the general public too. And so it's kind of probably half and half internal and half external, and that's it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So it seems like you guys are always working, pretty much everybody in the company is always working at 100 miles an hour. You guys got a lot going on, and it's there's so many moving parts to the auctioneering business, from the accounting side to marketing every property individually to managing all the relationships internally, externally, and strategy, compliance, legality, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of different moving parts, and therefore it takes a lot to be able just to manage it. What would you say is the key for you to be able to motivate and inspire your team members to be able to do the best they can to run with such a complicated business?
I think it's seems elementary. You've heard it probably a lot of times. Work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
We try to do both, and we do. We work hard. I mean, our team is committed. They're dedicated. They are talented, but there is that moment you have to kind of take a step back and have some fun with it too. And so that's partly why we do as much of the take time off and do quarterly events, or I think 2 weeks ago we went bowling for the afternoon, or we'll go chicken pickle, or we'll go into golf tournaments, or we'll do stuff like that and community events, because that's enjoyable, seeing that and helping people. But I think that it can be, and always, and this is a little bit of the real estate market in today's climate, because the real estate market specifically right now is so hot, and every decade or so things change. But when we're in a hot market, things seem to be very urgent. And somebody told me years ago that real estate is not real estate is not part time. It's not full time. It can be all the time. And so there
Yeah.
is a work life balance that you have to manage there. And so that's something that we always strive to continue to monitor for ourselves and our people. Is continuing to manage that and still grow the business and be dedicated with it as well. And so um, it's you got to find things that light your fire and reignite you. For a lot of us on the sales team side, we'll be in here in a couple months. We'll go back to the National Auctioneers Association conference and show in San Diego, and so then we get with other auctioneers from around the country, and you hear new ideas, and you take that carve out time to idea generate about what could we test or try or do new and implement so that we're continuing to advance as a firm, and that's energizing. I think not only for our team but certainly for myself. Um, so you have to find those things that light a fire and re-energize you and keep you relevant in the market too.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, you mentioned work life balance, you mentioned different ideas coming into play from multiple members of the organization. And then you also talked about what ignites people, what really sparks their flame, you know, and you focusing on others, making sure, they're healthy mentally, emotionally, and physically while working for you. That really says a lot about the leadership here at McCurdy. It's really nice to hear that. So I think we're going to wrap up here, but we want to give you the opportunity to share with the podcast community, anything that you would like to share about your business or just something motivational, whatever it is.
One thing that we've been talking a little bit internally here is um, relative to once the right people are in place, letting them have that autonomy after they've learned the skills, but then going back and clearly communicating objectives. I think that's
Yeah.
one step. Now, the second step is checking to make sure they have good understanding. And then three, I'd say, is kind of checking to make sure they agree with the approach to whatever it is you're doing. And so those have been, sometimes you think you envision in your mind, here's how I want to accomplish something. But if it's not clearly communicated, you didn't check for understanding, and or the person implementing on it doesn't agree necessarily with it,
Yeah.
then you're not going to get to the finish line. And so having that unity in whatever goal and objective you're trying to achieve is something that we continue to talk about internally just lately, because a good friend of mine from Ohio came back here and did a speech at one of our conferences, and we had a lot of our team there, and we'd been talking about that, and this is something that he surfaced, and we said, okay, let's expand on that. Let's take that internally, and how can we, use kind of this 3 point check to help everybody internally. And so we find little nuggets like those along the way. Sometimes you're in a business and there might be micromanaging. Well, a lot of times the reason somebody micromanages is because they're either not happy with the product or they didn't give good, clear understanding as to what the goal was. And so we look at things like that. How can we, as a team, get stronger and get better and advance? And so those are some little nuggets that we have and use. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to be here today. I appreciate the opportunity. It's great to see you again, Corbin. And Corbin, was it one semester or 2 semesters
Uh, for my,
that you were here for your internship?
I think it was,
I think it was two,
yeah, it was just under a year.
just
So
under
it
a
had
year.
to
So,
have been.
yeah.
So
And that's one thing, our internship program, I started to touch on this earlier too, and I'll close with this. We having gone to Wichita State and being in those classes during the day and in the office in the afternoons, that was in my years were 98 to 2002. And so that years later, President Bardo came out with the applied learning program. And now you see so much out of Wichita State about the
oh
applied
yeah,
learning program. And it just resonated so well with what I personally went through when I was in college, where I had kind of both environments. I had the schooling element, but then I had in the afternoons having a job and seeing the real world. And I can't stress how valuable I think that is for students that are coming up, and especially living in Wichita with the university we have and all the ties to the phenomenal businesses that we have in this community. There's so many of those opportunities to have that holistic experience when you're in your education years. And so we developed an internship program a number of years ago. And usually, nowadays it's, 3, 4, 5, 6 interns at any given time that are around our facility. And it's kind of providing what I experienced in college for those students today. And that's how we met with Corbin. And so we continue to grow that program. And if one or two of them after college is up end up making this home and are with us long term, we actually had three last May that came in full time into the business that were interns previously, and so kind of gives them a taste of what this world can look like. And that internship program has been another thing that I think has been very valuable and helpful, and I'd say mutually beneficial, not only for the students, but certainly for extra arms and legs around the office and the ability for them to see different pieces of the business as well. So, yeah, but again, happy to be here. Appreciate the opportunity, and wish anybody you all well with the future of the podcast, certainly, but also all the business advice that you're able to share with the community.
Oh yeah, and you know what? Before we really wrap up, I do want to give a little bit of a plug. McCurdy is always growing. They're always got job offers available. So if you need an internship or a job that has a leader that's clearly there, ready to align the purpose and invest in their team, McCurdy's a great place to start.
You always make room for good time.
Oh yeah, most definitely. So as we start to finish up, Carl's going to tell us about our next episode.
Yeah. Thank you again, Braden, for joining us. We really appreciate it. But our next episode is going to be on authenticity and serving others and how to find yourself. Who are you? What are you meant to do? Who are you meant to become? So you can catch these episodes every other Tuesday, either on Spotify, Google, or Apple Podcasts.
Make sure you also go to Enturion.com. That's ENTURIAN.com. You can also check out exemplifyleadership.com. We're going to be keeping everybody updated on social media. You can look at the Enturion YouTube channel to find the video format of the podcast. Remember that alone we survive, but together we thrive. We'll see you on the next episode.